When we think about the history of strategic management, it is useful to see it as a dialogue between different perspectives. Chandler showed us how structure must align with strategy. Porter emphasized positioning within industries and the necessity of trade-offs. Mintzberg challenged the rational planning view and reminded us of emergence. Ansoff gave us a framework for growth. Penrose reframed the firm as a bundle of resources and managerial capabilities. Building directly on that foundation, Jay Barney in the 1980s and 1990s formalized what we now call the resource-based view of the firm, or RBV, one of the most influential paradigms in modern strategic management. Barney's central insight was deceptively simple, but enormously powerful. Sustainable competitive advantage comes not only from external positioning, as Porter argued, but from the internal resources and capabilities of the firm. He shifted our attention from the industry structure outside the firm to the unique bundle of assets, skills, and competencies inside the firm. This was not an entirely new idea. Penrose had already pointed to the role of resources in growth, but Barney gave it formal shape and analytical rigor. He provided managers and scholars with a way to ask, what is it about this firm and not others that allows it to succeed? In his famous 1991 article, Firm, Resources, and Sustained Competitive Advantage, Barney argued that not all resources matter equally. To be a source of sustained competitive advantage, a resource must meet 4 criteria. It must be valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. These 4 conditions, often remembered by the acronym VRIN, create the foundation of RBV. Let us consider each in turn. A resource must be valuable. It must enable the firm to exploit opportunities or neutralize threats. Having a resource that does not contribute to customer value or competitive positioning is not helpful. A resource must also be rare. If every competitor has it, then it cannot be the basis for advantage. A resource must be inimitable. It cannot be easily copied by competitors, whether because of unique history, causal ambiguity, or social complexity. And finally, it must be non-substitutable. There must be no equivalent resource that can serve the same function. Taken together, these criteria identify resources that can truly sustain an advantage. If a resource is valuable, but not rare, it may lead to competitive parity, but not superiority. If it is valuable and rare, but easy to imitate, then competitors will soon catch up. Only when all 4 conditions are met does a resource provide lasting advantage. This framework helps us make sense of why some firms outperform others even within the same industry. Consider Apple. Its design capabilities, brand reputation, and ecosystem of products and services are valuable to customers, rare among competitors, difficult to imitate, and non-substitutable. Many companies can make smartphones, but none can replicate Apple's unique blend of hardware, software, brand loyalty, and design. These resources together explain Apple's sustained success. Or consider Southwest Airlines. Its advantage did not come from planes, which are commodities, but from its culture, routines, and low-cost operating model. Its ability to maintain efficient turnaround times, standardized fleets, and a strong organizational culture of cost consciousness created a system that was valuable, rare, hard to copy, and difficult to substitute. Competitors tried to replicate Southwest's model, but most failed because they could not imitate the culture and coherence of the system. Barney also pointed to the sources of inimitability. Some resources are unique because of path dependence. They result from a firm's unique history that cannot be replicated. Some are inimitable because of causal ambiguity. Competitors cannot quite figure out what makes them successful, as the relationship between resource and performance is unclear. And some are inimitable because of social complexity. They depend on relationships, trust, and culture that cannot be engineered easily. Think about Toyota's production system. For decades, competitors studied it, copied elements of it, and tried to replicate its lean manufacturing practices. Yet many failed to achieve Toyota's level of performance. Why? Because Toyota's advantage lay not only in specific tools like Kanban cards or just-in-time delivery, but in the entire social and organizational system. The culture of continuous improvement, the trust between workers and management, the shared norms of quality. This system was socially complex and causally ambiguous, making it extremely difficult to imitate. The resource-based view thus provides a compelling answer to the question of sustained advantage. Porter had shown us that industry structure matters. Some industries are more attractive than others, and positioning within an industry is critical. But RBV showed us that two firms in the same industry can perform very differently because of their internal resources. Industry may set the stage, but resources determine the performance of the actors. Critics of RBV have raised several points. Some argue that the VRIN framework is tautological. We say resources are valuable because they lead to competitive advantage, and we know they lead to advantage because they're valuable. Others point out that RBV can be too inward-looking, neglecting external forces. A firm with valuable resources may still fail if the environment shifts dramatically. Think of Kodak. It had resources in film production that were valuable, rare, and inimitable. But when the digital revolution changed the environment, those resources became less relevant. RBV explains sustained advantage, but less so the disruption of industries by technological change. This is why later scholars developed the concept of dynamic capabilities, which can be seen as an extension of RBV. Dynamic capabilities are the abilities to sense opportunities and threats, seize them, and reconfigure resources accordingly. They build on Penrose's idea of learning and Barney's resource-based logic, but emphasize adaptability over time. A resource may be valuable today, but dynamic capabilities ensure that firms can refresh their resources for tomorrow. Still, RBV remains one of the most influential perspectives in strategy because it shifts the question of advantage inward. It asks managers to identify what makes their firm truly distinctive, what cannot be easily copied, what must be nurtured and protected. It encourages organizations to look beyond generic assets and to recognize the importance of culture, knowledge, and capabilities that are embedded deeply in the firm. Let us consider Google. Its algorithm and search infrastructure are valuable and were rare at the time of their development. They became difficult to imitate because of the massive data, learning effects, and infrastructure that competitors could not match. Over time, this became the foundation of Google's dominance. Even as others developed search engines, none could match the scale and quality of Google's results, because the resource base, data, talent, infrastructure, was unique and self-reinforcing. Or consider Zara, the fashion retailer. Its resource is not simply clothing, but a supply chain and organizational model that allows it to go from design to store in a matter of weeks. This fast fashion model is valuable to customers who want the latest trends quickly. It is rare in its efficiency and integration. It is inimitable because it depends on complex coordination across design, manufacturing, and retail, supported by culture and routines. And it is non-substitutable because no alternative system, delivers the same combination of speed and trend responsiveness. This resource base explains Zara's competitive edge. The ethical dimension of RBV is worth exploring too. If resources are the basis of competitive advantage, how should firms think about the ethical use of their resources? Consider data. Data is a resource, valuable and rare when collected at scale. But its inimitability and non-substitutability raise questions of privacy, surveillance, and power. Is it ethical to treat personal data as just another resource to be exploited for competitive advantage? Similarly, if culture is a resource, what are the responsibilities of firms to nurture cultures that are not only high-performing, but also fair and inclusive? RBV does not answer these questions, but it forces us to ask them. Another ethical reflection concerns natural resources. Companies in extractive industries may hold resources that are valuable, rare, and inimitable, such as access to oil reserves. But is sustainable competitive advantage truly sustainable if it comes at the cost of environmental harm? In today's context, we must extend RBV to consider not only whether resources generate advantage, but also whether they do so responsibly. For managers, the RBV provides a practical toolkit. It urges them to inventory their resources and ask which of these are valuable, which are rare, which are difficult to imitate, which cannot be substituted. From this analysis, they can identify the core strengths to build on. But it also warns them not to assume that every resource matters equally, or that advantage can be bought off the shelf. Many resources, like machines or capital, can be acquired by competitors. True advantage lies in resources that are embedded, path-dependent, and socially complex. In teaching, RBV also provides a counterbalance to Porter's external focus. Students learn that industry analysis is important, but they also learn that firm-specific resources can matter even more. Two firms in the same five forces environment can perform very differently depending on their resource base. This duality, external positioning and internal resources, gives us a more complete picture of strategy. As we conclude this lecture, it is useful to situate Barney in the broader landscape of strategy thought. Chandler taught us that structure follows strategy. Porter told us that strategy is about positioning. Mintzberg reminded us that strategy emerges in practice. Unsoft provided a framework for growth directions. Penrose reframed the firm as a bundle of resources, and Barney formalized this into a theory of sustained competitive advantage, showing us that unique resources, when valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable, form the basis of long-term success. The resource-based view has limitations, of course. It must be complemented by attention to external change, by dynamic capabilities, and by ethical considerations. But its core insight remains fundamental. What makes a firm distinctive, what it can do that others cannot, lies not only in the markets it serves, but in the resources and capabilities it holds. Strategy is not only about where you compete, but about what you bring to the competition. That is the enduring lesson of Jay Barney and the resource-based view.